Some women learned how to survive because nobody ever really came for them. Not emotionally, not practically, not consistently. So they become the strong ones, they become the capable ones, they become the women who figures it out alone. But strength born from abandonment does not feel powerful. It feels lonely. It feels like carrying your life with clenched hands because somewhere deep down you do not expect anybody to come through. You do not trust anybody to come through. Some women know that feeling intimately. Some women do know that feeling intimately. The feeling that if you stop holding everything together, everything will collapse. The feeling that you have been useful to people but never truly covered by them. And God preserved a woman in scripture for exactly this wound. These women do not ask for help easily. And from the outside, that looks like strength. It looks like maturity. It looks like independence. But sometimes it's not strength at all. Sometimes it's a woman who has learned that asking can be humiliating when help does not come. She's asked before, she's needed before, she's hoped before. And what met her was silence, was delay, was people who just spoke, cared in speeches, but disappeared in burden. So little by little, she stopped expecting support. Not because she stopped needing it, because needing and not receiving becomes too painful. And eventually, she begins living by one quiet internal rule. I need to handle my life. She becomes so efficient, so dependable, highly functional. She learns how to move fast, solve problems, absorb pressure, prepare for worst case scenarios. People call women like this strong, but many strong women are simply women who no longer believe anyone is coming. That is why the struggle to rest, the struggle to make peace, to live life. That is why they do not lean naturally. That is why they trust preparedness more than presence, because dependence feels dangerous. When dependence has disappointed you before, it feels very dangerous. So women become dependable because dependence once failed them. And if you know that woman, if you are that woman, there is a woman in scriptures God preserved to help us understand her. Her name is Hagar. Hagar enters the biblical story as Sarah's servant. Immediately that tells us something. She's living inside someone else's power, someone else's household, someone else's decision. She's not steering her own life. She's surviving inside arrangements made by more powerful people. And many women know what that feels like. To be deeply affected by decisions they did not get to make. Then Sarah cannot conceive. Abraham has a promise from God. There is frustration in the house, waiting in the house, pressure in the house, and Hagar becomes the solution. Her body becomes useful. Her womb becomes useful. She's suddenly important because she can provide what nobody else can. But Hagar is not brought into this because she's cherished. She's not even asked if she wants to. She's brought in because she's needed. And needed is not the same as loved. Needed is not the same as protected. Needed is not the same as safe. A woman can be deeply relied on and still feel deeply alone. She can become valuable because of what she carries while remaining emotionally uncovered in the same place. And that is Hagar's story. An arrangement is not something that a woman just agrees to, but she didn't have an option. It teaches them that usefulness is currency. That as long as I am useful, maybe I remain necessary, maybe I remain tolerated, maybe I remain included. But usefulness is fragile protection because people often protect what they cherish. They do not always protect what they merely use. And Hagar is about to feel that difference. Once she conceives, Sarah turns hostile. Scripture says, Sarai dealt harshly with her. Harshly. Very harshly, meaning the very place that benefited from Hagar could not emotionally hold Hagar together. She's needed there, but she's not safe there. She's there, and there are women who know this arrangement intimately. A place where you are needed, but you're not safe. You're required in a place where you're not protected, counted on in a place where their pain has no room. That kind of environment teaches a woman to stay alert all the time, guarded all the time, careful all the time, because rest only works when you feel covered. And Hagar does not feel covered. So she runs. She flees into the wilderness. She runs. And yes, physically, she's leaving Sarah's house physically. Yes, she's leaving Sarah's house physically, but emotionally, she's doing what many women still do now. She's deciding that loneliness may hurt less than staying where she keeps getting wounded. She's lonely, but loneliness is safer. Think about it. Pain can make isolation feel safer than intimacy. Some women feel withdrawn, maybe not with their bodies, but with their hearts. Stop asking, stop explaining, stop leaning, stop expecting anyone to understand what this has cost them. And somewhere in that withdrawal, they make a silent agreement. I will survive this by myself. And this is where pain goes when it has nowhere safe to go. It drives women into wildernesses. Not always literal deserts, but inner deserts, places of exposure, places of uncertainty, places where there is no emotional covering left. Hagar is physically in the wilderness now, but she's also psychologically in the wilderness because she has no household, she has no defender, she has no stable belonging, she has no visible future. She's just a woman carrying the consequences of everyone else's dysfunction. And this is often where unsupported women end up. Not necessarily with sand under their feet, but with the terrifying realization that they are largely on their own. No one is really carrying me. No one is really considering what this cost me. No one is really coming into this burden deeply enough to relieve it. And the danger of this place is not only exhaustion, it is invisibility. Because when women suffer unsupported long enough, they begin to feel emotionally unregistered, unaccounted for, unnoticed. It is not just that life is hard, it is that nobody fully sees how hard it is. And this kind of unseen suffering can make women feel like they are disappearing in plain sight. Hagar is in that place when scripture gives us one of the gentlest and most stunning lines in her story. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness. Found her. Pause there. The angel of the Lord found her. That means Hagar is not the one initiating this encounter. She's not searching well. She's not praying eloquently. She's not spiritually composed. No, she's a runaway woman in distress. And God came looking. That matters because many women secretly believe God is easiest to access when they are functioning, when they are praying correctly, when they are emotionally stable, when they are spiritually impressive. But Hagar is none of these things. She's frightened, she's disoriented, she's emotionally raw. And God enters that version of her. God found her in that version. The angel of the Lord finds her by a spring. A spring. Not a random detail. I don't think it's a random detail. I believe very strongly that a spring is a place of water in a dry land, a place of sustenance in a barren environment, a place where life can continue. Even the geography was preaching to her. Before Hagar had language for what is happening, God had already met her in a place marked by hidden provision. That is the tenderness of God. He often meets women in dry places with signs that barrenness is not the full story. And then he speaks, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? This is the first thing he says, not a command, not a correction, a question. There is something deeply intimate about being questioned by God, because question slows women down. Question makes women examine things that we're trying to outrun. Questions force consciousness. Where have you come from? It means, what has happened to you? What pushed you here? What are you carrying out into this wilderness? Because women can leave situations physically while they are carrying the injury internally. You can leave the house and still carry the hostility. You can leave the relationship and still carry the rejection. You can leave the season and still carry the fear. And where are you going? Meaning, what future is this pain building in you? What kind of woman are you becoming if this wound remains uninterrogated? God is not gathering data. He knows everything. He's locating Hagar. He's locating her history. He's locating her pain. He's locating her direction, locating the woman inside fleeing. Because before God gives Hagar instruction, he gives her attention. Before direction, attention. Before movement, sight. Before the next step, recognition. Unsupported women often become obsessed with answers. They're asking, how do I fix this? How do I move forward? How do I survive this? We're always asking questions. But God paused Hagar before solution and gave her something she may not have felt in a long time. To be deeply noticed. He saw her. He saw her pain. He saw her anguish. He knew what she felt. He understood it. And this is what makes this encounter holy. Hagar is not merely receiving information. She's receiving the shock of being seen. God saw her in her distress. He saw her in her confusion. He saw her in her unsupported flight. Seen as more than a servant body useful to a household. For perhaps the first time in her story, someone is addressing Hagar as a person in her pain. Think about it. Not as a function, not as a womb, not as a domestic solution. A person. God saw her as a person. And the unsupported woman does not realize how starved she is for this until it happens, because when all your relationships are built around what you provide, what you manage, what you endure, being seen can feel almost disorienting. Then God gives her promise. He tells her he sees her son. He sees her future. He sees multiplication beyond this moment. Meaning Hagar's story is not ending in this fleeing. God is writing beyond the pain. And something breaks in Hagar there. Not because all her circumstances are solved instantly. She didn't get sorted out instantly. But invisibility has been interrupted. She realizes, I'm not alone in this wilderness. I'm not alone in this pain, in this my unregistered suffering. I'm not alone. I'm not invisible in this unsupported place. God has looked directly at me. And Hagar responded by doing something extraordinary. She names God. You are El Roy, the God who sees me. Do not rush past that. Hagar does not say the God who helped me, the God who answered me, the God who instructed me. She says the God who sees me. Because sometimes the first miracle a wounded woman needs is not immediate rescue. No, it is the end of invisibility. To know that her suffering has been fully registered by heaven. El Roy, the God who sees me when people use me but do not know me. The God who sees me when I'm carrying pain no one is naming. The God who sees me when I'm running because I do not know where safety is. The God who sees me in unsupported places. This is not a small devotional moment. This is identity-altering revelation. Because a woman who thought she was surviving unobserved now knows, I have been located by God. And women who have spent years feeling emotionally unseen know how earth-shaking this is. Because being unseen does not just tire you. It makes you question your value, your significance, your mattering. But Elroy answers that one holy truth. You matter enough for God to stop in the wilderness and find you. But Hagar's story does not end at the spring, and this is what makes her mirror so painful for many women. Because some women do not suffer once. They suffer in layers over and over and over again. It does not stop. Years pass and then Ishmael is born, life moves, there is history now, there is memory now. There's at least one undeniable moment where Hagar knows God saw me. That encounter, God saw me. You know, the funny thing is, despite that sacred encounter, Hagar finds herself displaced again, sent away, unsupported, walking into another wilderness again. This time is even worse. This time she's not pregnant. She's not a pregnant servant fleeing hostility. She's a mother with a son and not enough resources. She had nothing. She had a skin off. She had water and bread. That was all. Now the fear is heavier because the burden is heavier. The stakes are heavier. And there is a very particular kind of confusion that happens when a woman who have already seen God once finds themselves devastated again. Because now the question is not, does God exist? Because she knows. She's encountered him before. She knows he exists. The question is, God, where is the God I met? She's asking for him again. She wants to meet him. I named you Elroy. I know you see me. And why am I here again? Why am I going through this unsupported situation? Why another unsupported place? Why another season of carrying too much? Why another moment that feels like no human covering? This is the crisis of remembered revelation. When what God once showed you feels harder to hold because current pain is louder than old certainty. You met him before. It's a different kind of pain. Many women know this. You have seen God's faithfulness before. You have survived one hard season before. You have had moments where his presence felt undeniable. And yet another wilderness comes around, another grief, oh my God, another delay, another disappointment, another unsupported chapter. And suddenly, what you knew about God feels harder to feel than it used to. Not because it was false, because you knew that encounter was so real, but because repeated pain can make remembered truth feel far away. Hagar walks into the second wilderness carrying Ishmael until eventually the water runs out. Resources thin, strength thins, hope thins. This is not a woman who has never seen God. This is a woman who has seen God and still feels at the edge. This is important because spiritual history does not make women immune to emotional collapse. I wish it did. I wish it does. But it doesn't. It doesn't immune us from emotional collapse. Many women think previous revelations expire when sufferings repeats. You met God before and you're thinking that encounter is over. No, it's not over. It's still the same God. As if the second hard season means the first encounter meant less than they thought. But Hagar's story says otherwise. The God who saw you then still sees you now. Repeated pain has not made him blind. Another wilderness has not made him distant. And the scripture says, God opened her eyes and she saw a well of water. Opened her eyes. Notice this carefully. God does not introduce himself to Hagar here. He reorients her. This is not first revelation. This is renewed perception. Because the deepest issue is in this second wilderness is not whether God is present. Because she knows he is. She's encountered him here. The deepest issue here is whether Hagar can perceive provision while grief is screaming. I realized something with Hagar. And with women generally, because I understood that pain narrows sight, exhaustion narrows sight, fear narrows sight. A woman can become so consumed by what she's missing that she loses the ability to register what is still there. She sees the empty water skin, she sees the dry landscape, she sees the immediate threat, but she does not see the well. Not until God opens her eyes. And many women live here. Not women who have never known God. Women whose pain has become louder than their perception. Women who knows his name but cannot see his well. So the second wilderness teaches Hagar something the first wilderness began. El Roi does not only mean God saw me once. It means God still sees me. He sees me all the time. He sees me over and over and over. The spring taught her she was not invisible. The well taught her she was not abandoned after the spring. The same God who found her in flight is the God who sustained her in depletion. There are women watching this who have built entire identities around not being carried. You trust preparation more than presence. You trust your own labor more than rest. You trust emotional distance more than vulnerability. Because somewhere inside, self-sufficiency started to feel safer than disappointment. You solve quickly, you stay useful, you say, I'm fine. Before anyone can discover that you're drowning, you move into management mode before panic becomes visible. And after enough years of this, surviving starts to feel like your personality. This is just who I am. I do not need much. I am better handling things myself. But many women are not actually living in peace. They are living in unsupported competence. There is a difference because functioning is not the same as being held. Handling everything is not the same as healing. Staying efficient is not the same as feeling safe. Some women are not strong. They are unsupported with impressive coping skills. And God is not mocking that woman. No, he's not. He knows why she built those systems. He saw the people who required much and covered little. He saw the disappointment that taught her not to lean. He saw the moment she swallowed panic and kept moving. He saw the night she rehearsed backup plans because trust felt irresponsible. He saw the years she stayed useful because need felt too exposed. He saw all of that, just as he saw Hagar. Not after Hagar becomes spiritually polished. Not after Hagar becomes emotionally whole. Right in the middle of unsupported distress, in the middle of fleeing, in the middle of collapse. This is why Hagar matters so much. She's not just a woman in the Old Testament. No, she's not. She is scriptural witness that God knows how to locate unsupported women. Women who are carrying too much. Women who feel emotionally unregistered. Women who have become so used to solving their own emergencies, they no longer know how to relax their souls. Women who say, I'm fine, but deep down, they are breaking down. Women who still live with God in their vocabulary, like no one is coming. And maybe that is the deepest invitation in Hagar's story. Not simply to admire El Roi as a beautiful name. I know we hear it a lot, El Roi, the God that sees me. But not simply to admire El Roi as a beautiful name, but to ask, do I actually live like El Roi is true? Do I live like I am seen? Do I live like divine attention is real? Do I live like I'm carrying this with God? Or am I carrying this as though heaven is watching silently from a distance? Because many women know the name of God intellectually. And they're still there organizing their lives around anticipated abandonment. They know God sees them. But they still embrace like nobody does. They know God is faithful. But they still build every emotional wall as if they are the only available protector. And Hagar's mirror gently confronts that. The God who sees you is inviting you to stop making unsupported living your normal. He's inviting the graced woman to admit that competence has not made her safe. He's inviting the overprepared woman to admit that backup plans have not brought peace. He's inviting the highly functional woman to admit that efficiency is not intimacy. Because healing begins when women stop worshiping the sentence, "No one is coming," and begin trusting the holier sentence, "God sees me here. God sees me in the burden I cannot explain well. God sees me in the panic I keep private. God sees me in the years I have spent holding too much together. God sees me in the place I learned to survive alone. And if He sees me, then I am not as unsupported as fear keeps preaching." That does not mean people suddenly become reliable overnight. No, it does not mean all practical burdens vanish tomorrow. No, but it does mean the unsupported woman no longer has to build her entire inner life around the assumption of abandonment. Because El Roi is not just the God who noticed Hagar. El Roi is the God who taught Hagar she was never surviving unobserved. And maybe this is where your healing begins too. Not when every person around you finally becomes dependable, but when the woman who learned no one is coming starts to believe she has been seen all along. Hagar is your mirror, but El Roi is your invitation. The God who sees, the God who sees still sees you.